Good evening. Coming to you from the LBC in my kitchen. You even have a little kitchenware in the background. And I'm happy to be here. I love the social media, the chance to connect with you. So I just follow that desire. And yeah, today I was feeling like I want to share how I continue to see that really the connection that we get to develop through these practices, rituals, lifestyles, mindsets, psychologies that we can use with ourselves, which all could fall under the name of yoga if you want, because yoga really just means to connect or to join. I'm going to make sure you get that eventually. So I say it almost every time I get to talk about yoga. But so yoga, meaning the Sanskrit word yoga, means to join, to connect, or union. So when we look at how anything that we can do that reconnects us can be what we're going for with our practices, and even with anything that we might call therapy, that we can realize that what is the therapy really is the connection and the reconnecting that we get to do for ourselves and with ourselves. And that's a piece that's super interesting to get into and explore, because especially whether or not you want to get spiritual about it, you could perhaps get into how your use of your practices, meaning, sure, any form of meditation, meaning anything that gives you just time with yourself to listen to yourself, really. And a big piece that helps with anything in the name of meditation is we're encouraged to bring in the spirit of non-judgment as we're doing that listening with ourselves. And a lot of awareness gets developed, which can really help. Just the awareness that we develop through our practices, that really helps us just reconnect with ourselves, just getting more aware of what actually is going on for us as we listen to ourselves through anything that we might call meditation, which sure could be sitting on a pillow or really being in any position, but it also could be time on a walk, time in the journal, time on the surfboard, even time when you're playing music. There's so many ways that we can play with our moment and actually make it a form of meditation. And these are some of the ways, really. Dropping in, letting it be a time to be more in a listening mode with ourselves and even in the moment, and enjoying that presence that we can develop also with just getting in more of a listening mode and more into the moment. But this connecting that we get to do with ourselves, which really, just starts with any time, anywhere, any place that we get to listen to ourselves, right? And that in itself starts to develop our connection with ourselves. If we're just talking about a connection with ourself, right? Whether you even want to, again, don't even have to call it a spiritual thing. But if you wanted to, you could say maybe a connection with your more true self, your more aligned self, your wiser self, or your heart, or your soul, or your higher self, right? So, or even like God within, if you want, or your piece of God within you, whatever you like to call it. So, but you could just say yourself, right? So when you see that anything that you can do, that just first of all gives you time to listen to yourself, right? And just be with yourself, develop your awareness of what the heck is going on for you, how you are doing, how you are feeling, how you are thinking, right? Bringing in that non-judgment, and you get to learn a lot about what's true for you. And though it's not necessarily pleasant, right? And so possibly, right? Because as we take a look at how we're thinking, how we're feeling, how we're remembering, how we're worrying, right? It may or may not be pleasant to see what's actually happening in that mind. So that's where that non-judgment really helps us to aim to not try to judge if it's right or wrong or good or bad. Partly because that's just going to give us more things to kind of tangle up the mind, but also because we could see that the judgment isn't helping, right? And even if we wanted to align more with maybe more higher part of us, a more spiritual part of us, maybe that part of us wouldn't look at that with judgment too. So that's part of the connecting that can happen with bringing in that non-judgment. although that's a practice in itself. And then I see that also maybe we could say what's even better than just non-judgment, and I think it's what we hear everybody talking about these days, is like self-love, right? Like if we could actually be listening to ourselves, noticing what's true with a sense of like love or compassion for ourselves, that would be really awesome, right? So, and also journaling is an amazing place and way to do that. And I do a lot of journaling, and it really helps me as a form of meditation and a form of yoga, right? Because yoga just means union. So my journaling is a form of yoga and a form of meditation, and it gives me that time to listen to myself, and I can bring in that non-judgment more and more, and there's a connecting element to that. So yeah, first of all, just building anything in that gives us time to be with ourselves, listen to ourselves, and then the practice of bringing in the non-judgment, or even better, the more like compassion or self-love. So yeah, that's just one first piece of the reconnecting possibilities and the therapy of the reconnecting that we can get with what we can do with these practices, right? And so to really just boil it down to what does do that for you is what I'm really wanting to help us all look at, right? And that, sure, things that bring us into the body are part of that. So it may be things that feel like yoga poses, but it also may be just anything that brings you into your body, right? It could be walking or dancing, or even just the deciding, or lots of forms of art, quote unquote, right, might bring you into your body more. Playing music, making art, or even things like journaling does bring you into the body more too, which is really interesting and cool, right? And that has its own important, helpful elements to us to do things that reconnect us with the body, right? And also, whenever we're doing those things, we also get to be in that space with still listening to ourselves, still hearing those thoughts, right? Still noticing what's true on the inside, still doing that non-judgment thing while we're doing that thing that may feel like a physical thing. But yeah, that's another piece of the therapy of a lot of these practices, right? And the awareness that things that bring us back in the body are helpful, right? And it just feels better for us to get back in the body and remember that we're not just meant to be living in our heads. So the reconnecting that we can do with ourselves, including, reconnecting with our body and reconnecting with our truth, right? In that we're just listening to ourselves and noticing what's true right now, but also, and even a more like long-term dreamy way, we're starting to also get into more of a framework of listening to ourselves with like visions and dreams and ideas, right? And what we want in life. And so that time with ourselves can really help. So, hey, I'm seeing some friends here. And so I'm just so fascinated with and excited about the power of whenever we do anything that just helps us reconnect. And I apologize because I thought I had my washer off, and then now it's making sound, so might sound like I'm in like a factory. Just the laundry. But so anything that reconnects us as the therapy, but really knowing that the connection is the therapy. And I've been posting a little bit that I just finished a draft of this book that I really felt like I needed and wanted to write, so I guess I have written it. Now I'm just got it in editing stages, but this book about yoga for your mood and your mind and your mental health. And I found like one of the first chapters is talking about how the connection that we get with these practices, the connection that we can create with ourselves, right, in all these various ways, connection with, again, just with how we are doing, just connection with ourself, just plain straight saying it like that, right? Or connection with our heart, our soul, connection with a spiritual sense, period, right? Can be a therapy. And as you start to bring in this idea of how things that we could call yoga and meditation, but basically things that reconnect us like that, how that's going to help with our mood and mental health. And I think the awareness we're in now is that we all have mood and mental health, right? Whether or not we have a diagnosis or we feel like we're officially struggling, right? It's still a thing, right? So it does make sense to take care of our mental health, right? And even to play with how much we can take care of our mood, right? And have an effect on it. And not meaning that we're not going to have maybe ups and downs and feel the feelings, which is part of it. And that's one of my chapters, that it's important to let ourselves feel the feelings as part of having more of a positive experience with mood and mental health. But yeah, but to see that just anything that we do that's reconnecting us can be really the therapy that's happening that is going to help with something like mood and mental health. And yeah, through something that we might call yoga or meditation. So, like maybe an example is if you're using something like journaling, which again is totally a form of meditation because it's giving you that time to listen to yourself, right? To become even more of that observer, become more of that watcher with yourself, and then even more if you bring in that spirit of non-judgment. Um, and then it's like you're talking to someone, right? Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? But when you're journaling, that was an awareness that I had at some point. So if you are spiritual, then you can start to feel like you're talking to someone when you're journaling. So maybe you're talking to yourself, right? Maybe you're talking to your higher self. Maybe you're talking to God, whatever you call it. But so yeah, if you even just add a practice like journaling, which is totally a form of meditation and a form of yoga, because it's a connection practice. Remember, and that's all something needs to be yoga. Sorry to tell you, or I'm happy to tell you actually. So basically, yeah, once you find things too, that's really the thing I want to bring forward. Because a lot of us have found some things that work for us, right? Like some of you here who I know are like writers or things, right? Artists. If you have things that work for you, to realize that that's like a practice for you, and maybe part of why it feels good for you, why it works for you, is it because it helps you stay connected with yourself, right? And develop that connection with yourself. And that's becoming a therapy for you, right? And I would vote for like more of that on an even preventative basis, right? I mean, sure, we can use these things if we're feeling off and use it responsively when we need it, but also we can use it more like preventively. So that's where, like, if we do some of these things more like every day, I feel like we're more likely to stay on top of the momentum of it all, because also a yoga awareness, which is another one of my chapters, is it's all energy. So when we start to remember it's all energy, our thoughts, our feelings, our health, our lives, then we can maybe get even more excited about playing with what effect we can have on the momentum of the energy of it all, right? And then how much just things that connect us in all these various ways can be the base of it all, and the solution, the therapy, the thing. And then what's so cool is it can be something you can do for yourself, to yourself, right? And then it's just going to help you and everyone around you and help you feel more connected. And that's a really cool part that maybe I'll end here with, is that I've really noticed the more connected that I feel with myself, the more I'm ready to connect with others. And even just each day, the more that I've done some things to connect with myself that day, the more I am ready to connect with others. So it's important work, right? Not even just because of our inner experience and how it's going to change that, or how we feel or how we live, but also how we can connect with others, which I feel like is always really a selling point with a lot of this, right? Like how it can help others, help us be different, better, more of ourselves, even, or more in our hearts, even, right, with others and in our work. It's more connected, right? Feeling more connected. So connection as the therapy, pretty cool. And really only you know what helps you create that feeling of connection. So use those things and get more ideas. And I'm going to keep sharing ideas. So thanks for listening, guys. Happy Thursday to you. And thanks for being here. Namaste.